All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. This is going to be a good one. We got Belle Killzone. This is going to be definitely an interesting for us to talk about for sure. I think there's going to be some discussion about this one, just based on what I've heard from the other guys. So, you know what, Mike? I'm going to let you kick this one off.
You're gonna let me kick this off? Well, I don't. Okay, all
Put
right.
your glasses back on.
So, so there was some good in there, right? To me, growing up, it felt like, to me, almost like a Dungeons and Dragons kind of a story or kind of a feel to it, as far as just the nature of there was some monsters in there. There's some people in there. There's different characters in there with different strengths, and so that to me was kind of cool because that brought back some nostalgia, just Dungeons and Dragons and being in that world for a little bit. So that to me was pretty cool. Um, as far as introducing a character like Ares into a comic book like this, this is where this is where I start to have a little bit of pondering or questioning in my mind in the fact that is this really the god of war, right? Is he really at that god level? Because to me, if anybody can hold their own one-on-one with this person, that seems not likely, even in for comic book world fashion. So I'll kind of lead off with that because I want to hear what everybody else had to say. But to me, again, I mean, I understand comic books are there to take you outside the realm of reality sometimes. But to me, what kind of was like not not enjoying the story, I guess, as much as I could have. It had some different elements to it, and my final note, and then I'll turn it over to you all. My final note on that is that I totally understand. Again, we've talked about some books in the past that have different stories, and then those different stories have different artists. This story again had multiple artists on it, and so books handle that differently. Sometimes they do it in maybe like chapters where they have different artists, and this one almost distracted me a little bit as far as there seemed to be a quicker pace of rotating through the artists, and that almost distraction from the story. And that, I don't know, because your eyes, when you turn the page, right, and there's different art, a different style of art, your mind starts looking at that and thinking about that, and oh, I like that, or it almost diverted me from the storyline a little bit when I was like, ooh, that's cool artwork. It's just, and again, I think it's one of those where if you go back and reread it, it of course doesn't do that as much. It's just the first time through where your eyes are catching all these different things. So I'll kind of leave it at
that. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And
Yeah.
I just want to see you. I want to see you stumble and like try and like be nice. So how can I phrase this?
How do I put it? So I did have some issues with this book. We talked about in past issues, like jumping in the middle of a story. Sometimes it's like, okay, I'm the one jumping in, so it's on me to kind of figure it out, right? So I'm guessing there's others in this series because the character relationships seemed established, like pretty established, like Belle and her sidekick friend, her human friend or whatever. But what was still getting me, it reminded me of back in the day of reading my old comics, because it was like, read, Fantastic Four number 72 for this background. And there was a bunch of that in there. And I was like, well, I don't want to I just want to get this story right now. Tell me this one. And then so I was frustrated by some elements in the story. It just felt like, to Mike's point, they were getting pulled into a different world or whatever, and to Ares' world, and I was trying to understand the rules of that world because he's the god of war, but he's sending all these guys. Okay, I get it. Ares has troops, but then it's like, well, why aren't they just whipping the shit out of these people if they're Ares troops? So I was like trying to get like what the rules were in this world. And then speaking to the artwork and having different artists, that was like jarring when we got to the new world, and I was like having to go back and be like, okay, this was the troll guy, but now he looks like, Dwayne the Rock Johnson in this panel, and a troll and Shrek in this panel. You know what I'm saying? It was, there was some thought. So I had to. It took me a second to go, oh, in Aries' world, everybody looks different. So I was trying to. It was too much forcing me to understand stuff. Does that make sense? Like, or to kind of let go and or not let go, but like take a minute to sit and think about, oh, this is why. When I just kind of want to get through that. So that's my overall thoughts on the book so far.
Yeah, I'm right there. I'm not going to do the him and haw and like, how can I say this nicely? There's a huge rug pull every time with the artwork, and it was super frustrating because there was some of the art I really liked a lot and was like felt very kind of like 80s traditional comic book to me, which I really enjoyed, and then the other style just wasn't working for me. I mean, I get it from a storytelling standpoint that they want to separate what these worlds look like, but then if that's going to be the case, make them dramatically different. Like go like, Bill Sienkiewicz style, like on one, and like, John Byrne on another one. Like make it more real obvious if that's what you're going to do. But I don't think it worked within this story element. And for me, maybe she's an interesting character. There was no real character development in any of this. It just there were times when it felt real slapsticky almost. And then I didn't have a clear understanding of what her abilities were. Like sometimes she's getting smacked around and thrown into a wall, and then she jumps right up and she's like, all right, well, that's no big deal. Let's go at it again. Like, is she God level power as well? And like, so there was definitely a lot of confusion, and like, and that takes you out of the story, unfortunately. I still had an enjoyable time. Would this be one I'd pick up again? Maybe not. But I think that they just need to really figure out what the character is and establish what the rules are for that character. And that would help drive the next story for sure. Paul, sorry, buddy. I know you picked these out, and I feel bad. I feel bad, being harsh on some, but
no. I mean, we're trying to, we're doing this for the fans, right? We want to let folks know what's out there, and so here is the upside, is that this character Belle, within the company Zenescope, it's the same writer. I'm relatively sure throughout many of her issues. She's had a lot of one-shots and some running series and a couple one-shots, maybe similar to annuals in the Marvel DC Universe type thing. Dave Franchini, he's been the sort of the artist the writer that is the constant. And it does seem that the art for each book, if it doesn't change book to book, like this one, it changed within the book. And I agree with you guys. Zenescope is one of those companies that's sort of approaching maybe the Image level, where they're starting to gain some pretty serious ground. But that should allow them more flexibility and allow an artist to finish all 30 pages or 32 pages and not switch. And I agree that it was distracting. It did pull me out of the story, and it forced you to sort of try to re-recognize characters. Which is tough when if the art is maybe similar or just a subtler change, that's not too big a deal. But again, it was like a couple of different striking differences, and so it does pull you out of the story a little bit, which is kind of frustrating. But the character, just Shane, to your point, to answer that question, she's actually a human who is, basically like a beast's monster hunter type thing. And we've seen this before too, right? This is not an original character idea, but the approach to the character is new. So I think they have a lot of good ground that they've covered if you look at some of the other issues, but this issue on its own would not compel me to pick up another issue if it looked like this. I would probably flip through and just maybe look for some more consistency, on the artwork, because that to me, it's Marvel and DC and the other companies have done that, and I'm not a fan of it. I don't know why it happens. I'm sure there's probably some reason, but this one, you had 4 different artists throughout the book, and they weren't consistent. They kind of jumped back and forth, which was kind of like, ooh, man, why? I think Mike and Ben, you guys said it with Ares. It's like one point he kind of looks like a cartoon, and then next he looked like Magneto, and I'm like, what is going on? So I like the character itself, but I think if future issues looked similar to this, I'm not sure I would pick it up. I think if anyone was interested in the character and kind of what she does and her mission and her abilities, maybe look for one of the other entries in her series, but probably not this one.
Yeah, to be fair, like, well, first off, I gotta correct myself. I said troll, but it was a Cyclops, so I had that wrong. At the beginning.
There you go.
How dare you?
So I'm blaming the multiple artists. That happened.
Yeah, right. Took me completely out of it.
To be fair, I did enjoy actually some of the camp in the dialogue between her and her friend enough to be like, okay, maybe I should check out another book like of this character just to see if maybe it's just this story I didn't quite jive with myself. So because I enjoy it's like in comic books, you get some cool, like some characters with that banter going on and stuff. Especially they have a friend like Spider-Man, Deadpool have their convos and stuff that are just like zingers back and forth. And I see that they were kind of trying to go with that with her, Belle and her friend,
right.
And her like doing little zingers to Ares and stuff, being a smart ass and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did get me interested enough in the character to check out other ones, but I would have to find out if there was multiple artists on those issues as well.
Yeah.
For fear of having everything kind of not really gel together. So I would, if I had a recommendation for future issues of this, or they keep, it looks like they're going to keep moving forward with this character, is just ensuring that consistency, and then ensuring that, because if you're coming into the middle of any comic book, you can't be like, I know, because I'm coming in the middle of this, of her existing, I know they can't spell out her powers every issue, but at least having some sort of, I don't know, world building or something to help me understand, like, because she's going into this whole new world, help us understand what the rules are in there, so for constructive criticism for moving forward.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. And the thing is, I don't think it takes a lot to do those kind of things. It's really just one simple line. Like I was a little unclear as to, she kept trying to reach for, was it a sword? And like, did that give her extra strength like a Thor's, hammer?
Right.
And it's unclear. Like, and if in a simple line of dialogue of like, if I could just reach my sword, I'd be able to have a better shot or something, like that. Or, another line of like, I can't take many more. I think she does say, I can't take many more hits from Ares or I'm done.
But why?
But why?
But
yeah,
why?
Exactly.
And I think, Shane, how they do that recap on the inside cover, it gives you a quick blurb about who she is and what she does. But, if she has a magic sword, that might be interesting to add. Say, along with her, magic, cursed sword, blah, 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 right? Bitten by a radioactive sword, that kind of thing, right? I mean, that kind of stuff, it gives you a little context. You're like, oh, okay, so if she loses the sword, she's screwed. It's kind of like Thor's still a badass, but if he drops the hammer, right, he better get it back quick.
Right.
So
100%. Yeah, I agree with you.
Yep.
Yeah. So have you read some of the other books with this character in it, Paul?
No, I mean, I'm familiar with Zenoscope as a company and what they put out. They do a lot of the kind of the Red Riding Hood, the werewolf, the witches, things like that, goblins.
Okay.
So they do have a lot of that type of stuff out there. Really, really great covers. Some of their stuff reminds me of Lady Death, which is another book that I have been picking up for years and years from Coffin Comics, but and Brian Pulido, the guy that created her, and he keeps that trucking along, and they have to kickstart. I mean, as prominent a character as she is, they have to kickstart. And so now I guess I would guess now, thinking back to some of the cons I've been to and some of the cosplay, I'm pretty sure I've seen Belle. I just didn't know who she was at the time.
Oh, interesting.
It's funny, you see these characters, and I you see people walking by, and you're like, I have no idea who that is, but that's a pretty outstanding outfit, and now I have an idea who it is. But yeah, I think context on the character. I mean, I saw the cover, and it really jumped out to me. I thought the artwork on the cover was really great, and of course that makes sense, right? That's how they want to first grab your attention. But just as like you guys have been saying, as I went through, I just like the first page, I kind of was like, okay, and then I saw 4 different artists, and I was like, okay, but give it a fair chance, right? And again, I think anybody who likes the essence of the character and kind of what she's about, and likes the Monter witch hunter type thing, I would say, grab another issue somewhere and flip through and just see if it follows the format that you're looking for. And I think maybe gravitate that way, right? So I think it's a good character. I didn't think that this book would pull me in, and it didn't.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. I feel like that's the thing about artwork in general. Even though the 4 of us may have been a little harsher on this particular book, if you gravitate towards the sword and sorcery style of things, if you're into Conan or like a Dungeon Dragon type of book, this is probably going to be the book for you. It's not going to be for everybody. So just because we give these reviews and these are all based on our personal feelings and how we look at the artwork and how it impacts us. So I hope the viewers of this show understand that and don't just cross it off as a possibility. If that's your genre, then you might dig this. And back to your point, Paul, I think that's another great thing that I hope comes from this show is this introduction to other comics that people might not be aware of, because like you said, you go to these Comic Cons and people are always trying to do something different because there's 1,000 Deadpools walking around, there's 1,000 Spider-Mans and Wolverines, and I see a lot of times now at the cons where people are trying to merge other characters. Mm-hmm. They do that a lot with Disney characters. That. They'll do like a Cinderella meets Storm or whatever they're going to mix up to try and create something different. And this is another opportunity to get introduced to a character you might not be aware of, and then you do something interesting and unique. And just like you said, you might not recognize it right away, and it makes you think, oh, all right, well maybe that's an interesting book, and I'll approach that cosplay person and say, hey, who are you dressed as? And, then maybe check out that book. So I think hopefully that comes from this too, just some other material for people to work with.
Well, and also, if anybody goes to a comic convention, it's easy to go to the Marvel or DC panels, right? But go to that artist's row, that group of unknowns that's probably sitting where we would have liked to have sat 10 years ago if we had the brass ones to give it a shot, right? And they're trying to make their way in, and you got to give those folks credit. I mean, they are hanging on and they are doing their best, and so they do some commissionings and they try to get noticed. Again, some of these companies like Zenescope, I think they're making some serious headway. I've never looked at their total sales or anything like that, but I always kind of look at Marvel, DC, Image as kind of like the trifecta at the top, and then everyone else is kind of sprinkled throughout. But Zenescope has a really wide range of books, and if you guys, when you go to your shops, if you seek out the other titles that they have, you can definitely find something you're interested in. I've got some of their other titles. They're more traditional type stuff. Like I said, like the, they've got like a Robin Hood, but she's a female archer and she's a hunter, things like that. So some really interesting stuff. So I think it's there. I think this is, again, an interesting character. This specific book didn't jump out at me the way I thought it might, just because I'm familiar with seeing it on the shelf. So this was the one I grabbed, but yeah, she's got a lot of other options out there. So definitely don't be swayed by this one issue. If you like the character, seek out the other titles.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you bring up an incredible point. Oh, sorry, Ben. Just real quick, I just want to point this out. the idea of heading down to Artist Row when you go to these cons, that's another great thing I think that hopefully we're bringing to the world, is that you can actually go to Artist Row and you might meet these artists that are working on these books, and be able to shake their hand without having to go to pay $15 or $20 to see an artist who's doing big name books for Marvel and DC that you got to pay money to see. You can walk up and say hi and say, hey, look, what are you working on next? At least and get a little sketch from them or something. Just say hi. I hope we get that out of this as well.
Definitely.
Go ahead, Ben. Sorry about that. I cut you off.
I know. I was going to talk about Zenescope, and Paul, you brought up some of the other books that they do. That was one thing that I will give credit to this book was I started looking up Zenescope's roster of characters and stuff, because there's that shared universe, which is cool. I always like when some of these independent companies start coming up with a shared universe once they start building out different characters, getting different writers and stuff. So seeing how they took, I love how they're taking the Disney-ish, the fairy tale, the mythology, characters, and kind of combining them into this like badass assassin vigilantes, and like all this stuff. So definitely, if I would tell the viewers, like, if you're interested in seeing like new twists on some of those kind of characters, I would check out Zenescope. So this one in particular had some issues that I've already brought up, but I feel like they're trying to do something new and different with a shared universe. So.
Yeah, I mean, they've got they do the grim fairy tales. They got a little bit of the terror horror in there, and so yeah, I mean, they're kind of meeting, like I mentioned earlier. They're satisfying that audience there with some of that the other companies aren't doing or try to do. They dabble a little bit and then it doesn't sell, so they fall away from it again. But these folks they've caught on to something, and they've obviously been successful. They've been going on for quite a few years.
Yeah, more power to them to try find a niche and then build a world around that,
right?
This whole shared universe around that, So, because why rehash the same old as we've talked about in past issues? There's only so many stories you can tell. There's only so many superhero names you can come up with before it's just like, okay, what do you, Couchman? I don't know, what are we gonna come up with this year?
Yeah, but you got to admit, Polka Dot Man is pretty awesome, especially the way James Gunn portrays him.
No, that was awesome. That was.
I mean, I'm still waiting for PB and J Man.
Well, it's real quick. Flash's a roster of villains is I think those are the ones they were sitting around drinking or whatever, and they're like, you want to be really dumb, and then then all of a sudden they go and write it and put it into Flash.
Yeah, but when you bring in Mark Hamill as the trickster, you got me now, man. I'm all in, because he not only is he the Joker, but he's the trickster.
Yes.
Don't forget, he's also Cockney.
Oh my gosh!
I can say that. It's a podcast. I can say that. George Lucas gonna sue somebody.
Love that movie.
Oh my god. Ooh, I just grabbed the wheel and.
No, it's all good. You steered it off course, but all right. We might as well let's go down the line and give our reviews. I think we all know where this is heading, but Ben. Because I want to see you squirm. I want to see you squirm a little bit.
Tear the Band-Aid off.
I already am. If you can't tell, I'm moving.
I know. I know. You're shifting around. You're like, how do I say this? You really did a good job. I mean, you tried. I mean, you did nice.
I'm sure you're great people. He's
rope-a-doping.
Oh man. All right. Jumping into it. So out of 5, man. Whew, I'm gonna have to for the art. I'm gonna go 1 for me, and that's because, and it was because of the change up. So I had to look at the art overall, and because it was so jarring having the few different artists just one after the other, and I wasn't understanding. I was like we were talking about earlier. I was having to, which character is this again, and stuff. I'm gonna have to give it that. Story-wise, it was still fun. It got me interested enough to go and look up Zenescope and look up their full roster of characters and books. So I'll give that like a 2.5. So overall, 2 for me.
Hey, that's fair. That's fair. What do you think, Mike?
Similar artwork. Totally understand the concept of what you try to do. You try to get some artist names out there and stuff. Just this execution, I didn't agree with this style. So 1.5 for me on that. As far as overall, I'm just going to cut to 2. I think again, there's a balance there. It's sometimes very challenging to come in for one issue and to try to grasp everything that maybe they've told up to this point. However, that balance comes in where you have to understand it from a reader's perspective, that if someone hasn't started at the beginning or doesn't know the full history, again, we know histories of Thor and Spider-Man and stuff like that now, right? Because they're massive characters. Unless you have that type of a character, I think you have to give a little bit of again, either a recap on the inside cover or a where we left off or something, just enough to be able to, if someone picked up this issue that we picked up and that's their introduction to this character, you have to give a little nugget that hooks us, just something. And I understand that's got to be incredibly challenging at times to do that, but I think in order to build the reader audience, I think that sometimes that's necessary. And so just again, I'm familiar with the publisher. I'm familiar with a lot of their other stories. This was a new character for me personally. I had not read about this character yet, and so I needed that little nugget, and it wasn't there. So
that's why I picked it, because I Zenoscope is one of those companies, like I said, that's getting a foothold, and they got some characters out there, and they've got some titles out there that are much more popular. So I tried to drop it a level and just see what else was out there for us. So I think you guys' feedback is dead on. So Shane, I'm gonna go ahead and follow suit with Ben and Mike and say that I think story, I'm going to go with a 2. And the reason for that is because the art, which I'm going to give a 1, pulled me out of the story. I liked the gist of the story. I understood where it was going and for the most part what was happening. Maybe I didn't know every single detail. I didn't need to know all the backstory, previous encounters with these characters or anything like that to get kind of what was going on. It's a comic book, right? So I don't need a whole lot of explanation. But I think, to your point, having a little blurb in the beginning, just like we mentioned before, talk about Belle's power if she has any. If we're talking about a magic sword, if we're talking about her history, all it takes is half a paragraph to explain that. Now I can jump in. I've got a little perspective. But then you pulled me out of the story with 4 different artists. So that was a tough obstacle, I think, for this particular issue. So regrettably, overall, I'm going to give it a 2. But I think other titles, like we've mentioned, with this same character, would probably attract definitely attract an audience. So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I love doing these reviews, even when it's books that, I'm not super excited about. I love talking to you guys and just hearing your thoughts on it, and also just hearing your reviews for them, because it always makes me like reconsider what my initial review was, because I'm actually a little bit higher than everybody, which is somewhat unnormal because I'm normally the one.
But I want to know what you're going to rate the book.
Yeah, right. So I'm pretty close. We're not, it's not outrageous. I gave the art a 2. And the reason I went probably a little bit higher is there's definitely some of the art that I actually did enjoy and had that comic, cartoony almost feel of, brought me back to some 80s stuff, some of it. And then there was that huge rug pull that, unfortunately takes you out of it. Story, I actually gave it a 3, just because I think there was some fun stuff, and I one, Spider-Man's probably one of my favorite characters, and the little quips that she was having when she was fighting brought me back a little bit to those kind of older Spider-Man days. So that little nostalgia kind of sat well with me. I just, all the things we talked about, unclarity and what I wanted there to be more from the character. That's why I gave it the 3. So for overall, for me, it's a 3. It probably should be more like a 2. But just from listening to you guys, I'm being probably generous. And once at the end, that comes back to this whole thing of I don't want to, bag on people that are, working hard. I get it. I'm sure a lot of these people, they're not making a full-time living off of this. They're struggling and putting in, time after work and whatever, and doing their artwork and, spending time and going to these cons and sitting at a booth all day. And it's a rough world to try and break into. And I 100% respect everything that these people are doing. All of these artists, any of these books that we review, even if we're not 100% into it, they all have all of my respect for the work that gets put into it. When you've got a full-time gig and you're trying to do something extra that you're passionate about and you care about, that that's where you should be in the world, as opposed to sitting in a cubicle and making money for somebody else. So I 100% respect them, but at the same time, I've got to be honest with my particular feelings about, how I felt about the artwork in the story. So I just want that to be clear for everybody. I never want to come across as I'm being difficult or anything like that, because I think always.
You know what, Shane? No, I mean, I think we're being fair to the creators here. We, while this particular issue may have not landed right with us, this character has other titles. And has made other appearances and is part of a shared universe. And so there's choices, right? We're just saying this particular issue. We're not saying anything about the particular artwork or script or character itself. We're just this particular issue, right? So I think it's important for anyone watching to know that we think that if this quality character shows up in another book, another title, or makes some other appearance, give it a shot, because I think the character is really interesting. It's not anything that's in the top 1% of originality, but it's definitely an interesting character. I think this particular issue landed with us with a bit of a thud. But give it a shot, definitely in another form.
Yeah, 100% agree. Yeah. Well, with that. That brings this episode to a close. I just want to, thank all the viewers out there. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Keep new content coming. Keep Paul going to the comic book shop and picking out new stuff for us.
Heck yeah.
And we'll see you on the next one.